This is Paul Schneiderman today on the 153rd edition of the Sports Untold podcast, also on the Seattle-based RainierAvenueRadio.world. My special guest today is Emily Kang Cantrell. Emily is the CEO of Seafair, and Seafair is a Seattle-based summer festival that involves hydroplane racing and other activities. We will definitely talk more about Seafair today. We have as I mentioned, with the Seafair CEO on. So let me get back to you, Emily, in a minute. My podcast is now on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, iTunes, Podbean. You can go to sportsuntoldpodcast.net. I encourage my listeners to click the like button regarding my show, not the hate button. And you can go to sportsuntoldpodcast.net and check out my interviews on other outlets as well, including my law firm website, plslawoffices.com. You can also just Google Sports Untold YouTube and you can watch some of the interviews. So real quickly, I had an X problem or Twitter problem earlier this year. I still stay on it, but something happened in my PLS Law Office's username. So I'm now using PLS Law Office's underscore. So I don't know what happened. There was some problem where I lost my username. But anyhow, life goes on. My producer and assistant's Olivia Coyne. Olivia's doing a great job. She's been with me now since 2023. Olivia's dad's a good friend of mine. Olivia is a University of Washington graduate, and she's going to be starting Seattle University School of Law this fall, which is also my alma mater. So very happy for Olivia. Olivia's going to have some great questions for Emily Cantrell today as well. All right, Emily, I promise to get back to you. I'm getting back to you now. Emily has a long career in the private sectors and nonprofit arenas. She worked at Como TV for many years. Emily is also an advocate for gun safety measures. She is a survivor of the 2017 brutal Las Vegas mass shooting incident, which we will gently hit on today. Today, we're going to learn more about Emily and her life and career, about Seafair, and we'll hit on some other topics as well. So, Emily, thank you for coming on the Sports Untold podcast, also on Radio Avenue Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Emily, why don't we just start? I like to make my shows biographical in nature in various respects. And what the heck, we can do a little infomercial right now. Why don't you tell us what got you interested in working in the nonprofit and private sector executive fields?
I would say I just kind of fell into it. I was a child that had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. So if we're going back, I'll take us all way back. But when I was in college, I needed an internship to graduate, and Como was the one that hired me. And so even though I did not like TV news at the time, I took an internship in the newsroom, and I fell in love with being in a newsroom and the people and the fast-paced environment in there. And so I ended up being in TV news for almost 10 years between Como and Northwest Cable News. But I found out when I was in TV that I missed being out and about because I was a writer and a producer and I missed meeting new people. And so that's when I got into tourism and hospitality and economic development. And I always loved smaller organizations. And I think that's what I liked about being in the nonprofit world and knowing that you're making a positive difference. And so I've just kind of stuck with it. And I was at Seafair back in 2016 and 2017. And I left for a little while, but now I'm back. Couldn't say no to this opportunity.
Well, we're going to talk about your position in a moment. And I grew up in Seattle. I'm a Seattle native. I know Seafair reasonably well. Why don't you give a working description of Seafair for people who know nothing about it?
Sure. So back in 1950, there was a group of businessmen in Seattle that wanted to prepare for Seattle Centennial the following year. So they hired the festival organizer, I think it was from St. Paul, Minnesota, don't quote me on that, but the organizer for their winter festival came to Seattle to help plan Seafair for the following year. But this person fell in love with the thought of Seafair and couldn't wait a year. And so we ended up planning a 10-day festival for that summer in 1950. And what a lot of people I found don't realize is that the Green Lake Amphitheater, if you're familiar with that, was actually built for that very first Seafair.
Never knew that.
Yep. And that's where Seafair had the aqua follies and a lot of activities out there. So that is where Seafair originated. And just think back, I mean, I wasn't around back in 1950, but there were no Mariners. The Seahawks weren't around. Seafair and the hydroplanes Hydroplanes, that was Seattle's first real sport. The Space Needle didn't even exist. And so Seafair was created as an opportunity to bring people together. It's all about community, it's about inclusive and accessible fun, and it's just grown over the years. But since 1950, there has been a torchlight parade, there has been Fleet Week. Fleet Week actually dates back as early as 1911 ish. It was called the Golden Potlatch back then. But Seafair just goes so far back. There's so much history, but it's all about community.
Love it, love it. So, my bad, my phone's ringing, but we'll deal with that later. Um, so my question for you is, why don't you tell us about your job as a Seafair CEO? What does your job entail? And just out of curiosity, how do you get paid for your work?
How do I get paid for my
You
work?
get paid, yeah, is it part of the city of Seattle, your work as Seafair CEO, or
It
tell
is
us?
not, no. So Seafair used to be two different entities. It used to be the Seafair Charitable Foundation and or Seafair Foundation and Seafair Festival. So the foundation side would handle royalty and Fleet Week, the ambassadors program, and then the festival would put on all the events. And in January of 2020, the two entities merged and became one 501(c)(3). So we are a true nonprofit, and we actually, this is also somewhat surprising for people, but we don't receive any city funding. So Seafair puts on one of the few citywide festivals and events, and we put on the only fireworks show in the city. If Seafair didn't do it, there wouldn't be a 4th of July fireworks show. But we actually pay to put on these events. We pay the parks, we pay the city. And it's tough, especially in this day and age when expenses are skyrocketing. And trying to find a sustainable path for Seafair, that's why I was hired.
So let me back up from it. One thing you said a minute ago, I think is very interesting, how the hydroplane races are really a major part of Seattle sports history. And my show's a sports-based show, and I think you brought something up that is very fascinating. That without having pro sports here, of course, the Huskies have been around and stuff, but that was really an interesting point you brought up. The hydroplane races were a professional sports activity in Seattle. So I just wanted to kind of further emphasize how, yeah, your
Yes,
point.
and I am a husky, so yes, thank you for making that clear that
Yeah, no,
huskies were
it's
around.
interesting. So what does your daily job entail? Tell us a little bit about what you do kind of on a daily basis.
Someone asked me recently, it was actually the CEO of the Washington Athletic Club, if I was going to journal my experience, and I thought I really should do it because you can't make any of this up. Day to day is completely different for me. There's just everything's different. Since I started last September, a big part of my role has been to try and help move the Torchlight Parade to the waterfront. So for 75 years, it essentially divided the city in half on 4th Avenue. And so several years ago, the city started talking with Seafair about, hey, what would you think about moving it down to the waterfront once it opens? And then Seafair also helps with the sports victory parades. I know they're few and far between, but in the future, hopefully, we see a lot more of them. And so the idea is this will be the route for any future victory parades that we have. So part of being the first to do something, it's meeting with 20 different city agencies, all the businesses down on the waterfront, the hotels, the venues, there is a lot that goes into moving a parade that I never imagined. And then also down on the waterfront, you're dealing with trains, fire department, Washington State ferries. So that has consumed a lot of my time since I started. But then every now and then, I mean, before I jumped on this call, got an email from the Pirates talking about the Pirates landing that's coming up, or trying to get the mayor to some of our upcoming events, talking with sponsors and prospects. A big part of my role is fundraising. I think it falls onto the CEO. I think it should be a CEO's responsibility to make sure that a nonprofit is financially sustainable. And Seafair really hasn't been. There's been no rainy day fund. And we need a literal rainy day fund in case one of our events is rained out or just with all the uncertainty that's happening right now. So that's a big part of what I've been working on is finding new opportunities for partnerships, revenue generation, moving the parade. and just trying to take everything that Seafair has done and find ways to make it even better for the future.
We can tell you're definitely a busy person for sure in your work as a Seafair CEO. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. As I told you, I've been in Seattle now for my whole life and a couple generations. And one thing I hear from people who have a connection to Seattle or live in the Seattle area is that, they say Seafair has just changed too much, not what it's not what it was decades ago. How do you react to that sentiment that people sometimes say about Seafair?
I didn't attend decades. Well, I guess I did my first one when I was 12, so that was a few decades ago. It has changed, and a lot has also stayed the same. I think Seafair does need to evolve and find ways to make sure it's relevant. And we are doing that while also honoring our past. So we are not killing off the hydros. I know Seafair has been accused of that. This year, we're going to have double the amount of hydro racing that we've had before. So the Grand Prix are coming back for the first time since 2018. And then also, we have an amazing opportunity with seven-time NASCAR champion Jimmy Johnson. We just announced this last Friday. But Jimmy, when he was 4 years old, his dad took him to hydro races, and Bill Muncie's hydro broke down, and so everyone was out in the water. And Jimmy's dad looked at Bill, got a head nod from Bill to go ahead and put Jimmy down on the hydro. And fast forward 40 years later, and the story comes out, and someone manages to put it together and say, wait, I remember that day, and there's a photo of a kid sitting on a hydro. Well, this photo surfaces, and thanks to the help of the Hydroplane Museum and other parties involved, Jimmy's mom identified the child on the hydro as Jimmy. And so that was
Pretty
40,
cool.
40 years after. And so we have worked to bring Jimmy to Seafair Weekend, and he will get to drive that same hydro that he sat on 46 years ago. So we really are doing everything we can to honor the past while also making sure that Seafair is relevant and remains relevant for the future. All the new people coming into Seattle every single day who don't know what Seafair is or think it's just Blue Angels and hydroplanes, we are trying to find ways to make it fun and accessible for all.
Would you say that you want to preserve and enhance the traditions of Seafair? Is that a good
I
way to
would
break it
say
down?
so.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, sometimes change is needed. And one of the things I've struggled with the most, and I thought long and hard about this before accepting the role too, is we aren't going to make everyone happy. And that is hard for me to accept because I love making people smile. I used to be a people pleaser. I learned early on in my career that you can't be. But um, it is hard sometimes to make a decision knowing that not everyone will be happy, and that's the tough side of this job is knowing something needs to change.
So I had on my show back in about 2017 or 2018, the late Pat O'Day. And Pat O'Day was an iconic local figure. He was involved in the music community. He was a longtime DJ. And Pat was, for many years, was the Seafair hydroplane broadcaster. And I don't have the exact quote in front of me. I'm paraphrasing, but Pat said in so many words when I had him on my show a few years before he passed that he thought that the people running the hydroplane races in on Lake Washington were ruining it. He didn't think they were doing a very good job with it anymore. Maybe Pat was upset that he got removed as the broadcaster. I don't know the whole story. Or I don't want to give any misinformation, but he had some strong opinions about where the hydroplane races were in the 2017 era or so, 2018
Hmm.
era. Um, any thoughts on where Pat was coming from back in 7, 8 years ago?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, those are the years I really got into hydro racing.
Okay.
I mean, I can't say I didn't know a whole lot about it. I just fell in love with being in the pits and watching them. And my friend's husband was on one of the race teams. And so I just always loved watching them. But I don't know enough about the sport to be able to comment on something like that.
Totally understand. Yeah, Pat was a real hydroplane racing guru, and he just had some opinions at the time about how things were being run. But
Got it.
to be fair, Pat's unfortunately not around anymore, so I can't really get a follow-up opinion from him. But I just wanted to maybe get your thoughts what Mr. O'Day had to say years ago.
No, that would be interesting if we could talk to him.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. You mentioned the hydroplane and race boat museum. It's based in Kent, Washington. And I didn't really know anything about it, but I was on a walk. I live in the Leshigh neighborhood, and several years ago I was on a walk, and the hydroplane racing museum took out a lot of old hydroplane races at the pit in Mount Baker at the where the hydroplane races occur at. And so it looks like a neat museum. Are they involved in Seafair? The
Very
museum?
much so. I mean, we couldn't do what we do without them. And David Williams, the executive director there, has been fabulous to work with and just so generous and kind. And our trophies are stored at the museum, a couple of old vintage hydroplanes, and he's always willing to bring those out to events. So at our kickoff on Friday, June 20th, he's going to bring up one of the hydros there. The Seattle Sports Commission asked if they could borrow the Gold Cup for their big annual event, and he drove it up. We got to borrow some of the old vintage flags for opening day of boating season. That was our kind of a soft kickoff that we had, and he brought those to us. So we're really appreciative of that partnership.
Yeah, and that's a museum. That's a local museum I have not seen, and I would like to get there one day. So you
Field trip
you
in
beat
New
me to it. I was gonna, yeah, you brought up that museum before I brought it up today.
York.
So I do have an interest in seeing it. So this may be painful for you, Emily, to share, but I know gun control advocacy is also part of your biography. And if you're comfortable with this, can you share how you survived the Las Vegas shooting in 2017 and what you actually observed?
Sure. And I want to make it clear that I am all about gun responsibility. I try and avoid using the words gun control. I'm not trying to take away everyone's guns. I just want to make sure that they remain in responsible hands. So I wanted to clarify that. But the Las Vegas shooting, it was October 1st, 2017, and it happened during the 3-day Route 91 Harvest Festival. And that was one of my favorite weekends of the year. It was my third year attending it. And the shooting happened on Sunday night, and headliner Jason Aldean was taking the stage. And keep in mind, my background in TV news and having worked at Seafair before, I've covered a lot of death and destruction and violence, mass shootings. I have been through crisis communication trainings, active shooter drills, but nothing could have prepared anyone for that night. And so it was just after 10 p.m. when we heard what we thought were fireworks. And there was one round of them and it stopped, but then the second round started, and a woman who was standing right next to us went down on the ground, and we saw the blood. And so that's how we realized it was a shooting. And the first thought in my head was it's happening, because I was never someone who thought this could never happen to me. It won't happen in my backyard. I always knew that it could happen anytime, anywhere. I just wasn't prepared for it right then. And so it was a very, the next half hour, so I would say, well, the shooting I think lasted about 11 minutes, which felt like an eternity, but it was a lot of running and diving, running and diving. Whenever there was a break in the gunfire, that's when everyone would try and run. And then as soon as it started back up, you try and find a place to hide. And so we ended up hiding under what I later learned was the kind of production area. And it was under a metal structure. And the worst part of that was the bullets were ricocheting on top of it. And so it sounded like they were raining down on us. And it didn't know where they were coming from. There were two different times that I thought I was shot, and I wasn't, fortunately, but ended up running out of there and into an airplane hangar and hid there until police finally came and escorted us into a larger hangar. And then hours later, we went to UNLV. And the group I was with, there were four of us. We were separated for probably 4 or 5 hours. And, that's pretty scary, not knowing where your loved ones are. And their stories are very different than mine. I mean, there were 22,000 concert goers. Everyone has their own story. And so it was a very tragic evening. And I have spoken a fair amount publicly since then about the invisible pain and trauma from mass shootings, because I think a lot of stories are covered, people who have bullets in their body. And a lot of these stories are the ones that are told, but it's the people who don't have them and suffer the invisible wounds that, time does not heal these wounds. And so, in some ways, I think these are more dangerous than the physical wounds. So that's when I got involved in gun responsibility and advocacy work. And I just wanted to try and do something. Just it was the plane ride home that I realized I was suffering from survivor's guilt. Why am I here when 58 others aren't? And a few more passed since then. But that's really what got me started in that work and trying to help pass some bills here in the state and plenty more work to do. But we are making progress here in Washington state.
I mean, such a powerful story, and it's always hard to transition to a different topic when a guest brings up something as powerful as you just did. Um, have you been back to Vegas since?
I did. So twice. The first time I went to watch Jason Aldean finish his set, it was a year or two later, and I had zero desire to go back. But knowing that there were hundreds of other survivors going, and it was an indoor stadium, I think they did that on purpose. I did end up going, and I'm glad that I did. I went to the Healing Garden. I visited the site. It was surreal because the seating was still out there. Everything was gated up, but you could still see objects just strewn about that long after. That was tough to see. The Healing Garden was beautiful. So after that, I swore I'd never be back. And then fast forward a few more years, and I start here at Seafair, and I learn that the International Council of Air Shows convention is in Las Vegas every December. And so I went back this past December, and that's where the military acts are announced. The Blue Angels announce the cities that they're going to, and then you get to walk around the convention center and pick out other air show acts. And I have realized that I think Seafair is really it's this next chapter of my post-traumatic growth journey. It's forcing me to go back to Vegas and instead of fleeing the country for the 4th of July, which I did for a handful of years, I used to go to Portugal for the 4th because I hate the sound of fireworks now. Didn't know that until Mariners opening day, the season after the shooting. That's like my Christmas. I love opening day. And the fireworks that happen before the game, I wasn't expecting them and I just cowered and cried. I went into a little ball and I realized from that point on, I don't like fireworks. 4th of July, which was one of my other favorite holidays, couldn't be here for it anymore. So I would always leave. And then there was one year I thought, I'll stick it out. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to tough it out. And that was 2 years ago. July 3rd, I couldn't do it. I bought a plane ticket to Portugal, left the next day. This past year, I did stay in town and I did a Mariners game. So I was proud of myself for that. And so this next step is me not only being here for the 4th, but we're producing the 4th of July show. And I got to produce the soundtrack. I worked with iHeartRadio on that. So I think it'll be good for me. It's just interesting going from nearly losing my life in a festival to now helping bring new life to one that I love so much.
What a kind of amazing, I don't know if recovery is the right word, but just how you've coped with this, with a shooting incident, and you've been back to Vegas, and it's really something. By the way, I've been to Portugal. I was there in 2015. It's an incredible country. Do you have a tie to Portugal? Are you Portuguese descent? Do you have a connection to the country, or?
No, I wish. I did an executive MBA. It was a global program that kicked off in Madrid on February 29th, 2020. I do not recommend starting an executive MBA program in a foreign country when the world's about to shut down. So little did we know what was in store for us. But one of my classmates was from Portugal. And so I think the first time I went, it must have been before one of our residencies. And I went to check out Portugal before we all went to Madrid, fell in love with it, and went back 2 other times that year. But there's just something about it. It kind of reminds me of Seattle. Like if Seattle was around way back when, there's one part of Porto in particular, when I look at it, it reminds me of looking at Lake Union and Westlake and the Aurora Bridge. It's just, I don't know, it makes me happy over there.
It's a neat country. The prominent Edmonds, Washington-based travel consultant author Rick Steves has described Portugal as a European vacation within a vacation. So he's a huge Portugal fan.
But now everyone else has found out about it. So it's a little crowded over there these days, I hear.
Neat country, neat country. Love to go back there one day. So you've been a successful advocate at the Alliance for Gun Responsibility. Do I have the correct name of the entity, the
It
organization?
is. Yep.
Okay. And you're focusing on gun safety and gun responsibility. And how do you address people who have a different viewpoint about gun issues than you have, who have different experiences with gun issues than you've had? And how do you address people that are just see the whole issue differently than you do? Do you have a certain approach when you address these type of people? I mean, tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's tough. And I stepped down from the board of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility Foundation last October. I haven't been as active as I would normally have liked, but part of that happened after the state passed the assault weapons ban. And after that, I wasn't really sure what was next in my fight for gun responsibility. And then starting with Seafair, it made me pull back. The conversations, interestingly enough, I would almost say it's gotten easier over the years. And part of that is because I have been so outspoken. And I actually did a couple of podcasts with Brandy Cruz, and we don't see eye to eye on these things. And I was very, very nervous doing the last one with her. This might have been when we were trying to pass the assault weapons ban. I can't remember exactly. But after that, I had a few people reach out to me on social media saying, I believe in the Second Amendment. I am a gun owner, but I want to learn more. I want to be around the table for these discussions. How do I get involved? And that right there is worth everything to me. I truly do think this world would be a better place if we all just talked to each other a little more and listened and learned instead of going into something with an argument in mind. That doesn't get us anywhere. But I think if we were just more empathetic and willing to listen to someone else, we could make a lot of progress.
Did you think Brandy was fair when she had you on her show? Because I know she's sort of known for being kind of a center right person, right?
Yeah, I think we agree to disagree
Okay, okay,
on
okay.
a lot of things.
Good civil then. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So I got a legislative question for you. We'll move on from gun control in a minute, but I got our gun safety issues in a moment. But I got a legislative question for you. So President Biden on June 25th of 2022, about 3 years ago, signed the Bipartisan Safety Communities Act. It was the first federal gun bill legislation enacted since 1994, since the federal assault weapons ban in 94. The bill that Biden signed extended background checks for people under 21, further criminalization of arms trafficking and straw purposes, partial closure of the gun show loopholes and the boyfriend loophole. There was some stuff in there. I don't think I'm mentioning everything that was in that package. But my question for you is, did you view that legislation as a successful piece of legislation or just too watered down? That's my first question for you. And my second question for you with Biden's bill that was passed, or Biden's bill that he signed, do you think that bill has helped improve gun safety the last 3 years?
I don't know the answer to the last question. I haven't seen the data from it, but data from when we had the national ban on assault weapons, it showed that incidents were down. It showed that it worked. And I'm someone that believes in data, and I believe data should eliminate drama. I know there are some people that don't agree with that. I appreciated that bill and that effort. Anything done at the federal level, I mean, it's just so hard to make that kind of progress. So I know the Alliance was thrilled about that. I didn't have any issues with it. I wasn't involved in that process or anything, but for me, I saw that as a win.
I know some people in the gun safety committee thought it was too watered down, that legislation that Biden got through. So I just want to get your opinion on it. So, okay. Good. Well, Olivia has a few really good questions for you, and I'll give you a little sneak preview. One's a baseball question. So,
Oh boy.
Mine are kind of taking a big left turn here. Um, should I start with the baseball question?
Well, I leaked it already, but that's up to you, Olivia.
I think I will. Okay. I watched a YouTube video where you talked about your Mariners fandom.
Oh my gosh.
We are very much in need of some positive thoughts right now. So, what is your most magical Mariners moment being a fan?
Oh, that is so, I mean, it would be, you have me stumped.
It can be a magical moment.
I just love the days when it was Edgar Griffey. Just back in yeah, when I was in middle school, I feel like those were the prime years and making it to the playoffs back then. I just love that. I knew every name in the lineup. I don't know it anymore. I don't follow it as closely. I still love going to games, but I just miss like I'd say late 90s were probably my favorite memories.
95 run when the M's got to the AL Championship Series. That was pretty amazing.
I
So
can still picture that front page of the paper. Yeah.
I unfortunately missed that by a few years. And then what is your most magical Seafair moment growing up in Seattle and going all these years?
So it would be, gosh, I will tell you my favorite memory, my new favorite memory happened just last year. And I was shadowing the previous CEO, Eric Corning, and we were running around just all day Friday and Saturday. The Blue Angels were coming, and we were over at the start finish tower because I just gotten done meeting with police and fire and um, the people that put together everything that you see behind me, all the maps. And there was this dock in front of the start finish tower, and we were all kind of standing behind it, and he's like, you can go out there. I'm like, are you sure? And so my friend and I, we walked out there and we sat on this dock, and you're in the middle of the festival, but there was no one around you. And I got to watch the Blue Angels show from that dock, knowing this would be the very last air show that I would sit in peace and quiet by myself with no one around for years to come. So I soaked up every single minute of that. Prior to that, my friend at Como TV, Karina, her husband, I mentioned earlier, was working with one of the race teams. And so I always loved going out and supporting them. And at the time, the driver was Jimmy Shane. And so watching him win, those were some of my favorite memories.
That's pretty cool. I used to go watch the Blue Angels with my dad when I was very little, but I have no memory of it. I've seen pictures.
Gotta get you back out there.
No, I should. Now I definitely will. Um, and then my last question. You're obviously very, very accomplished. Definitely someone that I look up to. What advice would you give to someone like me, a young woman kind of just starting to adult? I know it's pretty general, but I'm open to any and all advice.
Say yes, be open to alternatives, and be willing to explore other opportunities. I think I am where I am today because of my very windy career path. And I know some people, they go to one place and they stick it out for 20, 30 years. I'm not that kind of person because I love doing everything. And I think that's because of my time in TV news, where you do have to do a lot. But I love trying out different things, and I am not an expert in any one matter. I am a generalist, and I learned so much by working for different companies and seeing how they operate. And then I was able to take that knowledge into the next role. So I treasure every position I've ever held at every organization. And I feel so fortunate that I have been able to be a part of such wonderful organizations here in Seattle, and I wouldn't change anything about that. So I think that would be my one piece of encouragement is if there's something that you want to try, do it. Don't feel bad about not staying in one place long enough.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
great feedback. Great feedback. Great questions. Olivia always asks great questions, so been fun to have her. So I'm going to try to get you out next 10 minutes or so. I
Okay.
kind of unofficially promised 45 minutes. Let me try to meet that. But if we go a little over, hopefully we'll go two over. But anyhow, but I'm watching the clock and I want to respect your time. So I've asked these two questions to about every guest since late 2019. This is a sports based show. So I'm going to pick your brain on with these two questions. So, who's a living sports figure, someone who's still with us, that you would love to interview or spend time with? A couple of names have come up, with some, I guess, Sue Bird, Simone Biles, Kareem Jabbar, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Sandy Koufax, the great pitcher still alive. So, who's a living sports figure you'd love to spend time with? And who's a deceased sports figure in history you would have loved to have spent time with or interview?
Man, these sports questions are trumping me. I shouldn't have done this podcast right after a finance committee meeting. Sue Bird is actually top of mind right now. We extended an invitation to her to be the Grand Marshal of our Torchlight Parade.
Oh,
So
great, great,
I
great.
have been trying to reach her. She is someone I would love to talk to right now, but I have
Oh,
so
for
much
sure.
respect for her. And we
Yeah,
actually, she has worked out at the same boxing gym that I go to, one of
great,
them. So I've
great.
gotten to give her fist bump in there, but I just think it's so great what she's done for the sport and for our city. Someone who's no longer with us.
I can throw out some names. I mean, Joe
Okay, please.
DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, Jackie Robinson. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. There's no wrong answer, you know.
Jackie Robinson would be fun. I mean, I would take any of the above, but I do love baseball. I would
Yeah,
not say no to that.
Jackie's come up for a lot of guests. Muhammad Ali, you know, the proper.
I'm sure as soon as we hang up, I'm
Yeah.
going to have an answer for you.
Okay, okay, but you gave two good answers. Actually, one of the guests who mentioned Sue Bird as a living sports figure he'd love to spend time with is the former Sonics and Blazers general manager Bob Whitsitt. So Bob
No.
said Sue Bird, so which is cool. Okay, so you are a CEO of a nonprofit. You've also worked in the private sector. Who is a living CEO or business figure you would love to spend time with? I don't know, Sheryl Sandberg, Mark Zuckerberg, Howard Schultz, or I'm just throwing out a few names. And who's a deceased executive in the private sector or nonprofits you'd love to spend time with? I don't know, you got Carnegie, Mellon, Rockefeller. I mean, yeah, I just kind of want to pick your brain on those two
You
questions.
are breaking my brain right now. And I think part of it is I feel so fortunate to have had conversations with so many CEOs and being at World Trade Center Seattle for several years, the board of directors, or I'm sorry, board of governors there is incredible. And Brad Tilden served as a co-chair from Alaska Airlines um, and the head of the port of Seattle. And I really, really respect these local leaders. And I'm grateful that I've been able to work with them. I'm trying to think of who I haven't met that I've wanted to. We also did so much programming at World Trade Center, including a series called From the CEO's Perspective with Terry Sitterman, where we got to meet some CEOs there.
Would the General Motors CEO interest you? Mary, what's her last? I just forgot her last name. Mary, I think she's the
I
first
saw
woman.
her speak once. She
Okay.
was fantastic. I feel like there are about a dozen names floating
Okay.
around in my head that I can't quite grasp onto. Um,
Sheryl
I'm also
Sandberg.
not someone that's ever dreamt of meeting an athlete or a celebrity. I don't know. I might be really weird, but I've just never been that person, which might be why I'm so terrible answering these
No,
questions
no, you're
right
you're
now.
doing great. You're doing great. There's no right. You're doing great. And let's just go back for a minute. So, any deceased executive in history, like corporate or nonprofit executive in history, you love to have spent time with? I don't know, Steve Jobs. I mean, there's a lot. Lee Iacocca was at Chrysler. I mentioned earlier, maybe Rockefeller or Carnegie or Mellon. I don't know. I'm just throwing out names. So,
Steve Jobs, I never met him. That would be pretty neat.
yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, one more line of questions with deceased and living figures.
Oh
You're
boy.
doing great. You're doing great. You've been involved in political advocacy. Who is a living person in politics you'd love to interview or spend time with, and who's a deceased person in politics you'd love to have spent time with or interview?
Living, I've got to say, Port of Seattle Commissioner Sam Cho. I am just in love with everything he's doing right now and using his platform for good. and all of these educational, informational videos that he's been sharing. I really, really respect everything that he's doing right now. Maybe he'll be president one day.
You're bringing up a local figure, which
I
is.
know I'm all local.
Would politics interest you? Would you ever look at being an elected official one day?
Did Dean not tell you how we met?
He didn't elaborate too much.
Oh, so or you're just trying to get me to say it. No,
Okay.
I almost had a run at Seattle City Council back
Okay.
in, it was a handful of years ago. It was after the Vegas shooting, and I realized the power of one voice when you use it to elevate all the other voices. And I ended up pulling out of the race about a week before I was going public with it. And it's because I received a job offer from somewhere that I couldn't turn down. And I think that was the right decision for me. I don't see myself ever entering the political arena. Every now and then I have someone text me saying, "Will you please run for mayor?" And that is not on the horizon.
I had to ask that question, Emily. Please forgive me. I had to ask that.
That's fine.
Okay.
It's better than the dead or alive question.
You're giving me a hard time now. Now I'm feeling bad about those questions. Oh, hey, by
No,
the way,
don't feel bad. I'm not going to do a podcast at the end of the day anymore.
okay,
I
okay.
learned
Oh
my brain
gosh,
is fried.
okay. I haven't finished the deceased and living questions. I
Oh,
actually asked it before. Who is a deceased person in politics you would enjoy spending time with?
can you throw out some?
Sure. I mean, maybe a president or a
I mean,
prime
like George
minister.
Washington, just go
What's
way,
that?
way. George Washington, just go way,
Okay.
way back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, I
Washington's a great name. It'd be interesting to get his take on what's going on now with a lot of
yeah.
stuff. So,
Wouldn't it
yeah,
be?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that would be
yeah,
very, very
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
All right, we're almost done. I'm going to ask another question I frequently ask guests. Do you have a favorite sports movie?
I binge watch. I don't have a favorite sports movie. Unless Jerry Maguire counts. But I binge watched all of the Rocky movies somewhat
Mhm.
recently after I got started with boxing. I used to not like watching fighting, but I have so much respect for the sport right now. And so I really enjoyed, I don't think I love the second one. First one was pretty fantastic. So that can be my answer for now.
That's great. And I like the Rock movies. And they had the kind of the sequel to the Rock movies. Creed was a good movie too. So kind of an
Yep.
extension of the Rock movies. Yeah.
Saw that, yes.
Well, we're almost done. Giving me such a hard time on these living and deceased persons you'd like to spend time with questions. Wow, I'll have to.
Oh, it's my fault.
No, no, no. I usually get guests that really get into, but you had great answers, so don't be too hard on yourself. Did a good job. Why don't you tell us what's in the future for Emily Cantrell, and why don't you hit on something we have not talked about today? I like to do that in interviews. So that's my first question. What's in the future for you, and is there anything else you'd like to hit on that we haven't talked about?
I'm going to take the longest nap in mid-August post Seafair. That is in my future. And some travel hopefully this fall. That's about as far as I've gotten for my future. I'm just really looking forward to that nap in a couple of months. Does that
Anything about
count?
what's that?
Does that count?
Sure, absolutely. A little relaxation. I had Jane Levy on my show. She's a sports author, and after she wrote her book about, I think it was Babe Ruth, she said, I'm going to take a break for a while. And she has a new book coming out this fall. So anyhow, so Jane gave a similar answer you gave a few years ago. Anything more about Seafair you want to share or your work? I like guests to maybe throw in what's on their mind about something maybe I've missed.
Would love to see everyone at our kickoff on Friday, June 20th. That's summer solstice. So we like to say summer starts with Seafair. We'll be at Pier 62. There's a public press conference at 10 a.m. Big celebration from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we'd love to see everyone there. Professional wakeboarder Sean Murray will be there. We'll be talking about a fun contest that we're doing in partnership with Sean and Best Day Brewing out at Seafair Weekend Festival. So that'll be a blast. But full summer of events happening. Check out the calendar at seafair.org. There's so much.
Love
Definitely
it.
not enough time to go
Good
through it all
stuff.
now.
Good stuff. I got to throw one more thing out here
Okay.
on a family note. My mom turned 80 last month, and my mother was a Seafair princess at one time. So I do have a little direct family tie to the Seafair.
That basically makes you royalty.
Not me. My mother was royalty at one time, not me. So
But she's your mother, so I think essentially that means you're royalty too.
I've never been called royalty in my life, but I'll take it.
Well, there you go.
Emily, thanks a lot. What a great discussion about some fun topics and very serious topics. And what a treat to have you on. And I appreciate coming on the Sports Untold podcast. I'll have you say goodbye to Livy in a minute.